everyone, and welcome to another episode of Plim Talks. It's me, your host, PL McMillan, and today I'm here with Eric Raglin. Eric Raglin is a Midwestern horror weird fiction writer and the editor for Cursed Morsels Press. I always mess up at least one name. Okay. He frequently writes about queerness, the terrors of capitalism, and body horror. His debut short story collection is Nightmare Yearnings, and his second collection, which we're talking about today, among other things, is Extinction Hymns, and which was published by Bridget Gates Press. He is the editor of Shredded, a sports and fitness body horror anthology, and Antifa?
Antifa. Yep.
See, a second one. I try my best, I'm known for this.
No
Splatterpunk. So welcome, Eric.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
I should have warned you that I usually get at least a few things pronounced horribly.
No worries, that's totally okay.
I don't know. There's like,
of
course. And thank you for joining me on Plim Talks. First time guest, long time viewer, as they joke about. I don't know if you've actually watched any of the other ones. Okay, then you know how feral it can get. But yeah, so you're an editor and a writer.
Yeah.
So you've seen both sides of the curtain. Do you mind sharing what your writing process is like?
Sure. A lot of my writing process, well, when it comes to coming up with ideas, I have sort of a few different ways to do that. Probably the most common is using a random word generator. And there's something about that process where it, will feed me a few words. Penguin, guillotine, there's a guillotine, a tiny wooden guillotine in
Hermit.
The back of my frame here. I'm like,
Hermit,
okay, well.
From the tarot card.
Hermit, it will generally get some ideas going in a way that I might not otherwise come to. So that's always a pretty exciting one for me. I'm working on another collection right now where all the stories are inspired by the titles of metal songs or metal albums.
Oh, nice.
And so in terms of like just coming up with ideas, those are some of the things I do. Other times just an idea will come to me. But as far as actual process, some of it is just writing over lunch breaks. It is hard to write and edit and do a full-time job. That is very intense.
Preach to that.
Yes. So doing that, writing on weekends a little bit. Sometimes I'll put on like ambient music or something. Other times it'll just be silence. But I'm not someone who can write for like marathon lengths of time. Most of the time it's like I'll write for an hour and I'll get like 250 or 300 or 400 words if I'm lucky. So I'm kind of slow with that, but it's pretty fun. So. Yeah.
So when you said that you usually will sometimes write on your lunch break, do you are you analog? Do you do it on your phone? Do you have your laptop with you?
I just do it on my computer. I have very awful handwriting, and so as much as I think it's a romantic idea to handwrite the first draft of your manuscript, I'm like, there's nothing romantic about my handwriting right there. So working with a computer is what works best for me. I like the cleanness of it and the quickness of it, and it just works well. Plus it allows me to look up research questions in an incognito window because it's always something strange and
you don't want to get on a list.
Yes, exactly.
How long does it take for a dead body to freeze?
Exactly, yeah.
All right. And so you talked about like the word generator. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the ways you get ideas for your story. Are there any others?
That's tricky. I think a lot of times it will just come from a theme that I'm interested in exploring. So for instance, there is I won't talk about that one right now because I think we'll get to that question later. But sometimes there'll be ideas that I'm preoccupied with. Like right now, a big one is like anti-LGBT, particularly like anti-trans legislation that is just sweeping through the U.S. and in my state as well, Nebraska. And that has just been a source of a lot of preoccupation for me, and exploring it through fiction is something that I want to do. And so I guess I would say like current events to some degree inspire a lot of what I write, for better or worse. I don't know that it actually helps me process it, or if it's just something that feels cathartic, and I've just the impulse to do it regardless of whether it helps. But yeah, that's another place I get some of my ideas.
All right. And like we mentioned in your bio, you're also an editor. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your pressed cursed morsels? No struggle with that word, just watch.
That's okay. There's a while back where I kept doing hoist moisels and just weird,
it's like a tongue twister.
Yeah. Yeah, so I started my press, oh gosh, well, we had our first release in, that would be 2022. So a relatively new press.
A COVID baby press.
Yeah, which was pretty exciting. So the press actually came out of a podcast project originally. So Cursed Morsels was originally a podcast where I was interviewing horror writers. And then I just found that I was enjoying kind of the publishing side of things a little bit more, and being like, okay, well, what do I keep? What do I get rid of for now? And so I got rid of the podcast, even though I did enjoy it. And the first release of the press was, as I mentioned, with like kind of the current event inspiration, directly inspired by the January 6th insurrection, and thinking about, okay, like how can horror respond to fascism in a meaningful way? So the first one was Antifa Splatterpunk, which came out a year later after January 6th, so January 6th, 2022. The second release was a much different project, which was Shredded, a sports and fitness body horror anthology. And that one, it is weird that I did it in the first place, because I'm not like a huge sports person. Like, I will watch mixed martial arts. I like weightlifting. I like riding my bike.
Have you watched what is it called? It's like that Korean strength show on Netflix.
Oh, Physical 100.
Yeah, isn't that one so much
fun? Pretty fun. It's pretty fun. But like, I'm not a super big sports person, but I do love body horror. And I was like, oh, well, like in terms of the realm of I guess the potential for social commentary, there is a lot of body horror involved in the world of athletics. And I think a lot of that does connect to some of my other interests. So like thinking about the ways in which we ask athletes to put their bodies on the line in some really like remarkable, dangerous ways, and then don't compensate them very well, or we don't, we discard them as soon as they stop being useful. So like connects to kind of my interest in anti-capitalism and that sort of thing. And that was a really fun one to edit. And then I have one coming out tomorrow, which tomorrow is April 18th for people who are watching this on YouTube.
Later.
Which is Bitter Apple's teacher horror anthology written by teachers and former teachers. And that one came from kind of my own personal experience teaching. I taught English, high school English for 6 years.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I'm out of it now. I'm away
you
from
survived.
I did. But I had to channel some of that process, some of that catharsis somewhere. And so like all of these releases through the press are pretty different from each other in some substantial ways, but I think they all have a few links to each other. One being sort of a commitment to exploring the ways in which capitalism and fascism affect our lives. Then weirdness and queerness, I think, appears in all of them in some form. And then we've got No Trouble at All, which is coming in June as well, which is an anthology of polite horror, which has a lot of those elements as well.
So congrats on your release tomorrow.
Thank you.
Which will be in the past when this is out.
Yes.
And congrats on your June release.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It is a very busy few months.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned this before about having the juggle, being a writer and editor, and having a full-time job as well.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you manage like what is essentially like having 3 jobs?
Right. I think I don't know that I can juggle them effectively all the time. Like right now, I just sort of have to say, okay, writing, it's time to put one of these juggling balls down for just a few weeks while I, get some stuff done for No Trouble at All and prepare for the Bitter Apples release, that sort of thing. And so some of it is just, I have to accept my own personal limitations of time and, what I'm able to do with the resources I have. So a lot of it is just sort of a slightly painful acceptance, like, oh, I really want to be working on this story right now. that I am very excited about. This is not a hypothetical story. This is a very real one. And I just know that I can't do it for a while until I finish some stuff for the press. So I don't know that it's so much juggling as it is periodically setting down a ball and then picking it up again when I can, or when another ball has hopefully fallen in a good place.
No, that's fair. So prioritization.
Yes.
Yes.
Like, I guess I'd give the example of I think I wrote 5 or 6 short stories in January, which is wild.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Very, very fast for me. But that was because I had less stuff with the press going on that month, and it was less of an immediate concern. So yeah, it just comes in seasons, I guess.
Yeah. So again, viewers, you can check out the press, see if there's any open calls when this is when the video goes live or whenever you watch it. Let's see if I can say it right. No! Cursed Morsels Press. Check it out.
You have been cursed with the
know.
curse of cursed morsels.
I think I have like interviewed several authors who have been in your anthologies, because I remember always seeing Antifa and being like, why do I have to keep saying this over and over again? And like crying. Just like I think you should just start naming your anthologies really simply, like Anthology A, Anthology B.
Perfect.
Just kidding.
I think that's great.
Okay, so but speaking of your writing and specifically about your collection Extinction Hymns, which is out now, so viewers, you can go out and buy this. The link is in the description below if you want to check it out, which I highly would recommend it. We're going to try to keep this as spoiler free as possible, but again, no guarantees if we get impassioned about what we're talking about, but we'll try our best. So why don't you tell us about your collection, and again, spoiler free if possible, what Extinction Hymns is all about? Yeah.
I think when assembling a collection, it is sometimes a little tricky to find that connective tissue, but this was one of those where I felt like even before I'd written half the stories, I knew sort of what the collection would be about. And it all kind of links back to the title in some ways. So like various types of extinctions, some of them very literal, like the extinctions of species, and then some of them a little more, I guess, poetic or metaphorical or figurative. So like we got the extinctions of a person's identity, or the extinction of a relationship, or the extinction of someone's dream in some way. And so that's kind of like the linkage between those stories. Originally, there were a couple other stories I'd considered including in the collection, including one about a penguin. That's where the penguin thing came from earlier. But I was like, oh, no, this really isn't one that fits particularly well with that theme. And so I tried as much as possible to have stories that connected in some way to the idea of extinction without the stories feeling really samey. I wanted still that variety in there, both in terms of like the genres and subgenres and feelings presented, and then in terms of like just the types of narratives being told. So yeah, that's I guess a little pitch for Extinction Hymns. If you like stuff that's a little darker, and is very much about endings and sometimes beginnings, I think you'll like it.
And so can you tell us, if any, in which story in your collection was your favorite?
I think the Resurrection Doll. I really love that one. I have a very personal connection to it in that it's so the story is like so outlandish in some ways.
You want to kind of describe the plot a little bit for the viewers?
Yeah. I won't give too much detail, but it is about this man whose husband kills himself, and then the man decides to get a like photorealistic sex doll of his dead husband, and comes to believe, whether correctly or incorrectly, that his husband's spirit is inhabiting that sex doll. So it's a very outlandish one, but yeah, I have sort of a personal connection to that idea of losing someone in that way and not knowing, or struggling to let go, not knowing why they died in that specific way. And I think I love that one especially because there are a few moments that I think are some of like both the creepiest and like the most emotionally evocative moments in the book. And then I just think the prose is really good. Like, not to toot my own horn, but I'll toot my own horn a little bit. Like, I think the prose for the story is
I feel like writers need to toot
poetic
their own
and
horn, though.
thanks. Yeah, sometimes it's good. A healthy amount of tooting.
Yeah, not too much tooting, just enough tooting. And can you share some of the inspirations that went into these stories?
Sure. Yeah. I'm gonna like take out the book. Here it is.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I've been forgetting to do that. I have the digital copy, so I'll just Photoshop a cover in. But it's nice that you have a copy.
Would it be like helpful to just pick a couple that
the
inspirations are really
okay? Can I just ask for the ones that were my favorites?
Please, yes, absolutely.
Okay, Angel Teeth.
Yeah. That one, I don't really know where the idea came from a whole ton, but there were some like very specific places that inspired it. So the public library downtown in the place where I live, which I'm not going to mention because y'all don't need to know where I live.
What, you don't want people visiting you if they're fans?
I don't.
You don't want a misery moment?
No, I'm good. Yeah, but I think with that one, like I really like the idea of creepy angels. They're just fun. They're like a cool monster creature, whatever you want to call them, to play around with. And I also really like the idea of exploring stories about I don't know if forgiveness is the right phrase here, but redemption. I think those sorts of stories are always very interesting to me. And then just like unknowability, like we can't really in any way fathom the motives of the titular angel, who I will not talk too much about because I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think angels are a cool creature. And those are a couple themes that I'm interested in. Also, the theme of addiction is one that I think really fascinates me because it is something that I find incredibly disturbing and just felt the sort of compulsive need to explore. So.
Okay, what about Dead Rain?
Yeah. With that one, that was a story I wrote, and thankfully it was published in my lovely friend Alex's Dreadstone Press. That one, very Midwestern story. I wanted to sort of picture like an almost like post-apocalyptic or like climate apocalypse Nebraska landscape. I will say I do live in Nebraska, so I'll give that.
Oh no, they're coming for you.
But yeah, I kind of wanted to imagine like, okay, what would some of these places, like these dirt road places outside of the city I live in, look like, in the wake of like climate disaster? Like, what happens when the owners of the farm have died and the livestock are left to rot? What happens when the fields get crisp in the sun and there's not enough rain to sustain them? Like, where do people go for food? And so like, not that it was like a fun thought experiment, but it was one that I was like very fascinated in and wanted to explore there. Yeah, just like climate apocalypse Nebraska. So I would say that's my inspiration for that one.
Okay, I think this one was my #1 favorite. And the title is really badass. But A Creature Nailed Upon the Corridor of Time.
Yeah. The title for that comes from a misheard Yes lyric, which is like kind of a stupid place for it to come from. And I don't even remember what the actual lyric is, so you'll have to forgive me there. But I really like epistolary storytelling. I think it's fun to see things told through diary entries and emails and online posts and found documents and that sort of thing. And so I was like, ooh, I kind of want to do some sort of like, I guess, paleontological horror, and also something that involves birds. Like, I don't think when we tell stories about dinosaurs, there is nearly enough focus on their bird-like qualities. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna, work with some sort of dinosaur-like, but also like cosmically monstrous, possibly, paleontological dig, or wait, is that the right word? Yeah.
Archaeological?
And something, anyway, yeah, something with dinosaurs or creatures, whatever it might be. Yeah, I wanted to tell it through the journals of a scientist. So I thought that would be really fun. So That's kind of where I wanted to go with that one. It just seemed like a fun way to tell a story.
And then the last one, which I think inspired the cover and is the
Mhm.
last story in the collection, The Last of Her Kind.
Yeah, yeah. That one, I wish I was not wearing the shirt because I could show you my owl tattoo. But big fan of birds. I really love birds, and yeah, this is I guess like the most explicit one in terms of its connections to actual extinction. I won't spoil any details about it, but it is called The Last of a Kind, so that should give you maybe some clues as to what it's about. And with that one, I think I just have for a very long time had a fascination with owls and a fascination for like natural history museums. We have some around where I live that have these like taxidermied animals, and not all the taxidermies are especially good, but it's they're kind of an interesting attraction. And so I
Like,
was
have you ever
thinking
seen a
about,
bobcat before? What is this?
yeah, yeah, like, are we, was this ever a real creature? Like, yeah. So I guess I took some inspiration from some of those like natural history museums or like taxidermy animal displays, which I always find like sort of morbid and fascinating and cool, but less cool in the context of this story for reasons you'll have to read to find out. So
Your rabid fans are like, Nebraska, a collection of like history museums nearby, slowly narrowing you down.
exactly. Yep.
Out of these stories, were there any that were emotionally difficult to write?
Yeah, definitely. I think the resurrection doll, for kind of reasons I mentioned, the topic of suicide is something that I don't know. I have personal connections to, and it's something that is hard to talk about and explore in that way. And then I think like the climate oriented stories, those feel very personal as well, particularly ones that I sort of set in the place where I live. For I think reasons that are very obvious, but What to Do with Grandpa, one of the stories in there is like one of the more bleak things I've written. And it was one that was like, it was fun to write because it was epistolary, but it was deeply unfun in the sense that it was like, okay, you know, I'm writing about very much like an end of the world scenario, and a person who is clearly like deluded, but thinks that this act that he's committing is going to have some sort of monumental impact. I'm trying to be very vague and not too spoilery,
No, that's fair.
while still being engaging. But
If you want to find out more, buy the book.
Yeah,
Available now.
from Brigade's Gate Press. Yeah,
Get it
exactly.
now.
But yeah, I would say like the climate change stories very much difficult at times. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one thing I appreciate about your the short stories in this collection was how you were able to effectively build these worlds. A lot of them were like post-apocalyptic, like the grandpa one, but without like drowning. But find out what that pun is all about by reading the book. But without drowning your readers with too much description, which would slow the plot down. Yes. Which is something I appreciated as a writer myself.
I'm very much not a hey there, look at my world building sort of writer.
Yeah.
I get very impatient with that. So
yeah. And so there were a lot of heavy topics, like you mentioned like the end of the world as brought on by like global warming and ecological disasters, and a lot of grief and loss. And then one really strong theme that I noticed going through was a lot of the stories dealt with religion. So what drew you to utilize religion so heavily in your work?
Yeah, you were like the second person I think who has pointed that out to me, and I don't think I was very conscious of it when I was writing it. It's interesting to me, I think in part because I'm not a religious person. But I grew up in a neighborhood surrounded by a lot of very like staunch Catholics, and I did like grow up in a Christian household too. So, but I don't know. I think fundamentalist religion and particularly like Christian nationalism, those sorts of things, really like fascinate and disturb me. In the sense that like, well, as a queer person who is, most of my friends are queer people too, like. This is some of these organized religions target people like us in some really ugly ways, and so I think there's some fascination with that. and kind of a desire for catharsis in stories like, oh my gosh, Most Bulbous Congregation would be one of them that has kind of that cathartic element, involving sort of queer people and their connection to
And that's the
conservative
one when
religious
the
institutions.
parents are sending their child off to be
For
straightened
conversion
out.
therapy.
Yeah.
Yes, nice
I was
pun.
going for another pun. Woo! Look at me go.
Yes, exactly. So I think that there's that like connection for me. I was also like, when I was growing up, very irreverent in a lot of ways, surrounded by I guess like that religious conservatism, and so I wanted to sort of express some of that irreverence with stories like that and stories like transubstantiation. But I'm also like deeply fascinated with religious people. Like I don't want to, by no means do I want to mock all religious people in any way. I think I'm fascinated by their sincerity, by their commitment to higher meaning. I think those things are really interesting to me. And so it's just like, I don't know, something that I want to explore in the form of a character who does care about those things. Like in transubstantiation with this child who is deeply worried about the state of his soul. So yeah, that's, I guess, what I would say with that one.
That's fair. And again, Extinction Hymns is available now. The link is below. So if this sounds like your kind of thing, pick it up. I will say, I feel like though it has a lot of religious themes, it's not really like, if viewers are worried about that, it's like not like it's going to hit you over the head with anything. All the stories are really even keeled, but well written, well thought like out, and very thoughtful. Not to use the word thought twice. I mean, I read all of them. Obviously, I feel like I just come across so dumb sometimes. It's Monday.
Totally fine.
So and viewers, if you haven't had a chance, my review is up on my site, but in a nutshell, I enjoyed every single story. I obviously had my favorites, but not a single one like was a swing and a miss. So I would heavily recommend it. It was a very enjoyable read. I honestly didn't put the collection down once. I just read all through it. It was a very enjoyable evening for me.
Thank you, Plum.
Yeah. So what are you working on right now?
Yeah, so right now there is soon to be an open call for the Book of Queer Saints, Volume 2.
Ooh.
I wrote a story for Volume 1, which was a lot of fun, and I'm hoping to include that in my next collection. But this story for Volume 2 that I'll be submitting is one that deals with these two people who are involved in an assassination plot, this couple. And one of them sort of drops the ball during this assassination attempt, and it results in another one of them dying. And this partner decides to bring his partner back from the dead with the help of this witch, and discovers in some kind of ugly ways that bringing someone back from the dead does not mean you're going to get the same person, or that person is going to be very happy to have been brought back from the dead. So
Buffy Summers taught us that.
Yeah. It's sort of like I guess an anti-fascist kind of zombie story.
Okay.
With some political intrigue. So
well, keeping my fingers crossed you get that it gets accepted.
Thank you. We'll see.
Yeah. So you wrote 6 stories in January, though. Are you planning on subbing those, or are those going to go towards your next collection?
I think most of them will probably be in the collection, but at the moment I have nowhere for the collection to be. And so I'm like, well, I might as well just send them out. So just a little trickle of submissions periodically.
You hear that, publishers? If you're looking for a new collection, Eric's DMs are open. I'm assuming they're open.
Yes.
So there we go.
For publishers, they are, yeah.
For publishers, no one else. Stay away. Stop trying to figure out where he lives. And so do you have any publications coming out in the near future?
Yeah, one that I'm really excited about, and I don't know the release date just yet, but Darklit Press is releasing Sick! Stories from the Goop Troop, which is, I think, 10 stories in total from me, Shelley Levine, and Lord Gislason, who's the author of Inside Out. Yeah, it's our goopiest stories
Ooh,
that are compiled into a
moist like a
disgusting,
carrot cake, you'd say? I don't
yeah,
know where I'm
moist
coming up
like
with
a
these. I'm hungry,
disgusting
maybe.
carrot cake. Yeah. So it's gonna be a lot of fun, and I don't know when that's coming out just yet, but sometime this year. So we'll see.
That's exciting. And
Yeah.
obviously, the viewers can follow you on Twitter,
Mhm.
which is Eric Raglin 1992. And
Mhm.
so obviously you'll tweet about it once it starts to come out. So follow
Yes.
him if you want to be kept up to date. Okay, now for my secret Plim question.
Okay.
Okay, are
I'm
you
ready.
ready? Okay, this is a fight to the death. I'm going to name 3 characters. You're allowed to pick one to be on your team, and then you have to fight the other team to death. So you have to pick the one that you think will give you the best chance to survive, and you have to tell me why.
I'm ready.
Okay, the creature from the Black Lagoon. Okay, Freddy Krueger. Um, and let's see, what would be a good third? Let's just go Freddy's natural enemy, Jason.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
from the Friday the 13th series.
I'm gonna go with Freddy in this case. So
To be on your team.
to be on my team. Yeah.
Okay, why?
The creature from the Black Lagoon, kind of just hanging out in water most of the time. So
I mean, but he can come out, or
yeah,
they.
but Freddy can like pop. Freddy can come out of like TVs.
But
He can
only in
come
your
out of
dreams.
yes, but
Does the creature from the Black Lagoon actually sleep?
That's a great question.
See, you messed up, you're dead.
Dang. Okay.
You did not
I think
survive
I'm
this
dead.
encounter. Yeah.
Hmm.
And if
But
you'll
I think it makes sense that the creature from the Black Lagoon and Jason would be on the same team because they
but they
both.
didn't get to choose that. You just
Well, but
teamed up
I'm choosing it for
a
them.
powerful water team.
Exactly. I mean, that's why I'm pairing them together because they got
You're not
the
supposed to
shared
make the
water.
enemy team strong.
Well, dang, I don't think I'm very good at this.
No.
I don't know, but well, okay. Well, I will say this: regardless of whether my team wins, at least Freddie will come through with the puns.
That's
He'll come
true.
through with the one-liners, and
That's
so even
true.
if we
I
die,
feel
we
like
will
you
die
just
with
picked
style.
Freddy because you like his fun, like his humor.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that's why. But I'm definitely gonna die. So
Yeah. Poor choice. Poor choice. You definitely would not survive this horror movie crossover, but maybe
shoot.
next time.
Mhm.
Well, again, this has been Plim Talks, and thank you, Eric, for joining.
Yeah. Thank you, Flip.
If you're interested in checking out his collection or his press, all the links are in the description below. So go ahead and just click that, follow him, look at the website, get a copy, let us know what you think of his collection as well. My review again is up on my website, and his Twitter is Eric Raglin 1992, or his website is ericraglin.com. So you can check him out on either of those sites. And again, thank you for joining. I'm sorry you had to die in a horrible way. You're terrible at
That's
picking
okay.
teams.
Thank you
And
again. I really appreciate you hosting.
yeah, of course. And I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
Bye.